Hello everybody and welcome back to my hands-on.NET stream. Today is Wednesday, so this means that we'll be playing or we'll be coding right now, and we'll work on our social media application that we want to implement with domain-driven design. And to be honest, I didn't manage to touch this solution anymore, so I'm not even sure exactly where we left last time, so we'll have to do a little bit of catch up. But I guess that we could do that together. So yeah, let's get started. Let's first greet you all. I'm glad you're here. I'm really glad you're here. Don't be shy and say hi. So it also rhymes. Kind of interesting. Okay, so let's evaluate. We've been working our last two episodes, I guess, on this user aggregate, which it turns out to become a very big one, but well, that shouldn't be a problem in domain-driven design, at least until we notice that we maybe need to split this aggregate in two different aggregates. I guess we're good with this one, so I'm happy to continue. But just to make a recap, as I said, first of all, for me, so we have this user type, which can be student, teacher, or staff. We have this name. Let me just look into the name. It's a value object. Let's see how it's implemented. It's just straightforward with first name, last name, and that should be okay. And then we have some public methods on it, which is change first name, change last name. So behavior right now, and for now we don't have any validation here. Let's go back to user. So we have then the faculty, because each user will in a certain way belong to a certain faculty, even if it's a student or a teacher or whatever. So yeah, in this faculty we have the name, the description, and each faculty has a list of departments and the factory method. And then we have this add department, remove department, and clear departments. And then we have also this belongs to faculty. That's actually, I guess that's what we did right at the end last episode. I guess that that helps us to find out if a certain department belongs to a faculty. Could be useful. Let's see. So we have this in this class. So in our class that represents a class, we have the faculty, department, and degree, and here we have to make sure that the department that is specified for this class belongs to a certain faculty. So in this case, what we did is simply, yeah, we use that method to actually validate if a department that comes to us in this factory method does really belong to that faculty. And if it does not belong to the faculty, then we just throw an exception right now. And I said that we'll probably think about how to handle this type of exceptions further, or just a little bit later, because throwing exception everywhere around the code is certainly not a very good approach. I would prefer to do this differently. But for now, I guess that yeah, that should do it. Let's go further. Then we have the class. So in the class we just looked, and then we have a phone number, which for now it's a string. Then we have an email address. An email address, I guess it should be also very simple. For now we don't have any validation, but we have overridden that to string to just output the entire email address, which I guess should be okay. And then we have this this entire enumerables, the colleagues of a certain user, because even teacher or staff, they can have colleagues. But then similarly to what we have on other social networks, we have also friends, and we have here a pending friend request. And for that we have created a class which is a value object, which represents a friend request, which has a GUID that stands for the user that this request comes from, then 2 towards the user that this request is directed, and then we have a date time, which represents the date sent. And yeah, I'm usually also not a very big fan of using date times. In real projects I might be using a library such as no.time, but for now I guess that should do it. Then yeah, we have the factory method, and yeah, we implement this this override for get atomic values, which helps us to identify when two friend requests are equal. That shouldn't be, I guess, the case too much, but yeah, that's okay. So right now what we would have to do is I guess to implement a factory method for this user aggregate, and that would be a fairly huge factory method, I guess. Let's create a new region, and let's call them factories, and the region, of course. So let's create our factory. Public, it would be a static, it would be return, it will return a user, and it will be called create. So now we have to think about what we'll actually want to pass in to this factory method, because the way I see it, I guess not all this, we won't need necessarily attributes or incoming parameters for all the values that we actually have here, but I guess that we will use a lot of default parameters, I guess. So the question, I'm not sure, but if you have a different idea, but the main question here would be what information do I really need to be able to create an instance of a student that should be valid, so that should keep our system work. We have to kind of imagine here scenarios like staff member is just adding a new student, or maybe a bunch of new students, and at the beginning there won't be actually a lot of information about the student. So probably right at the beginning they won't have a class, they won't have, maybe, I don't know, a list of colleagues, a list of friends, a list of friend requests. So actually the question is, I guess, what are the attributes that make a student, or that are really needed for a student? So attributes or properties without which a student can't exist, or it wouldn't have a reason to exist in our system. And I guess the first one would be the ID. So when a consumer wants to create a user, they need to provide an ID. So either is this from the database, or they can create it themselves if they are just creating the user. So that shouldn't be a problem, I guess. Let's look. What else do we need? What else do we need? I guess username and password. Maybe password is not important to have from the beginning, but maybe a username, I guess. Maybe we need to identify the user somehow. So let's we would need a username. Okay, what else will we need? Let's see. The password, I guess it's something that we can even set later, or we can add it separately, because right when somebody creates the user, this won't be the type of social network where users will just be able to sign up. So I guess that this is a social network for a university, and in this case I guess that students will be created by some staff, so they won't just sign up. So in that case we don't really need the password from the beginning, but what we will need, I guess, is the type. So the type is important, so we have to specify it here. User type, and let's call it type. I guess what we still would need is actually a name. We should know the name of a student, even if we don't really have a lot of information about the student. So let's add the name. I guess we still need to have maybe some contact details. So it would be an email address, and I guess we would have also the phone number. But let's go to a different line. So phone number, but we can leave only phone. Okay, and now I guess all the other parameters we can leave as default parameters. So starting with password, So here we can say string password, but we say that it could be null, so consumers won't be obliged to give us a password, so it can be null. Then what we have with the faculty, the class, let's add them. Faculty, but also it's nullable, so it can be null. So consumers don't necessarily need to provide that. So then we have the class, we said, and this could also be let's call it a student class. Now, of course, here I guess we will have also to do some validation in the factory method, because I guess that if they provide a class, so if a consumer provides a class, we also need to make sure that that the user type is student, because if the user type is not a student, then the teacher doesn't really belong to a class. So yeah, I guess that that's also a point that we have to think about. But also it can be null. And what do we have then afterwards? Phone number and email. We said that we need to provide them, so that's important. But then we can get this list of colleagues, friends, and pending friend requests, and all these IEnumerables can actually be null. So IEnumerable, what is the first one? Of user, and it is of type colleagues. Sorry, of type user, and we'll call it colleagues. I'm a little bit tired, I guess, so I'm sorry if I might say some wrong things at a certain point, but just feel free to jump in the chat and just correct me if I say stupid things. I said we can leave this at null. Then we have another IEnumerable of user, which represents the friends, and let's call this friends, and this also can be null. And last but not least, we will have an IEnumerable of friend requests, which would represent the friend requests. Let's also go on another line. So IEnumerable of a friend request, and this should be, let's call it friend requests, and this also can be null. So yeah, right now I guess that that we have all information that we would need. Once again, we just need the ID, the username, and the user type, the name, the email address, and the phone number. Consumers will necessarily need to provide this type of information, because we think that without this type of information, a user can't really or doesn't have a reason to exist in our system. So yeah, that's why they will necessarily have to provide those, but all the other information could be null. For instance, we can imagine if we want to create a new user, then probably there would be some event handler or command handler that would want to create a new user, but at the beginning the user will probably only have an ID, a user type, and so on. So it's not necessarily that that we have all of this. So yeah, let's try to see exactly right now how we should proceed with this. What we could do is right now we can create a new user. Let's say here var user equals new user, and what we want to pass into the constructor for now, it is the ID, because we have a constructor for that. But actually I guess that all this type of so my idea is that the information that we don't really need to validate, those type of information will be able to I guess pass to the constructor and just create them. So I guess that the username, well, there might be some validations there that we want to do, so maybe we just pass in the ID. So maybe we just pass in the ID. But even with the ID, we can do something like following. So we say if ID equals default. So if it is the default value, then we will throw an argument exception. And let's for now say ID can't be of default value. But if that's not the case, so we also validated the ID, and right now we can just create a user var, sorry, it's typed, so it's var user, it would be new user, and here we'll pass in the ID that right now should also be validated. And what we can do, we can say return user, so that we don't have any red squiggly lines. Okay, so right now so we have the name. The name is a value type. So if we go here at the name, we see that actually when we create a name, if we need to validate the name, so if you want to make sure that the name meets certain requirements, then we should implement all the validation for the name on the value object itself. And this would mean in turn that we would have to do this here in the factory method. But then this would mean that if we are here in this method and we have a name that is not null, so in that case we can be sure, we can assume, we can just assume in this case that that the name will be a valid name, because the validation will be done when the name is created. So in that case we can just simply assign it. So if we can say user.name would be a name. Okay, let's go further. What's the next property? So we have the username and the password, and for those we see that the username is here, and we don't really want to validate it right now, but maybe just a little bit later we'll make password be a value object, and then we will introduce some validation there. Although I guess both password and string could be made a value object. Those could be made a value object, I guess, and then they will contain the validation for it. But we can also do the validation here at the aggregate. I mean, it's nothing wrong to do validations for the entire aggregate, or actually the aggregate root is actually the class that's responsible to keep everything really okay and with a good state, with a consistent state. So validating the password and the username here at the aggregate root is actually not necessarily a bad idea. So I guess then in this case we could leave these as primitives. So then we can say user dot username equals username. What do we have then? We have let's see what we have. We have the user type. The user type is important, and here we have to say user dot type equals user type. How did I call it? Type. I called it type. The parameter, and then we have the name, and then we need the email address. And once again, when it comes to the validation of the email address, I guess that we can actually do the validation at the value object itself in this case. So basically we would need here in this factory method, we would need to find some way to validate it. And this would mean in turn, let's put a to do here. To do and validation. Okay. But once again, this means for our user then that when we'll get an email address here as an incoming parameter, then we can be sure that that email will be correct. Otherwise, it can't really be created. So in that case, we can just simply assign it user.email equals email. So that should be it. And right now we are going over to the default parameters. So let's see what we have to implement there. But still we also need the phone number, so the phone number is also needed, and if we need to validate it, we'll validate this here at the aggregate root level, but right now I don't think that we really need to do that. Let's call it phone number equals phone. That's how we call it. And now we are really it's really over with this. So right now we can just assign the other values. So actually, how could we proceed here? Because there are some validations that might need to be done, but on the other hand, let's take them one by one. So if password is null, it doesn't really bother us at all. So we can say in this case user.password equals password. So once again, if it is null, then we really don't care about it. It's null, it's null. We save it as null in the database. So no big deal. But then we'll have the faculty. And the faculty, again, I guess if it's null, I don't have any problem to assign it here. It can be null, no problem. Then student class. Now with student class, I have this problem. So we have this invariant, let's call it, like we should do when we talk in domain-driven design terms. The problem here is that with student class, so here we have the invariant or the validation that we will have to do, and make sure that the class, if it is provided, so it can be null, but if it is provided, then maybe we should make sure that we don't assign a class, or that the class can't have a value if the user type is not student, because only a student can belong to a class. A teacher or staff member can't belong to a class. So I guess this is something that we will have to do here, and we'll implement here a very basic validation. So right now I don't want to create custom validation classes, but I'm sure that we'll do that at a certain point. So right now, if we have here, so we want to say that what we want to say is that, or what do we want to validate? First of all, if class, we have also already the if. So first of all, I want only in the case that the faculty, or sorry, the student class is not null. So student class is not null, and so it will be an and. So if the student class is not null and user type equals user type dot and here it would be not equal. So if the user type does not equal to user type student, in that case I guess we can throw an error. Throw increment exception. Let's provide also a brief explanation right now, and that would be that only students can belong to a class. So only students can belong to a class. Let's go this through once again. So if the student class is not null, so it has a value there, and if the type of the user is anything else but student, in that case we want to throw this exception. If the student class is null, then we don't really care, we can assign it. If the student class is not null, but also it is a student, then it will also go further. So yeah, I guess that should do it. And in that case we can see here simply user class, or class equals student class. So if that is not the case, then we just throw an error. If we don't throw the error, then we can basically go ahead and assign the student class. Okay, so yeah, let's go one step further, and then I guess we'll start with all these enumerables, and let's see what should be, how should we validate colleagues, basically. That is right now the question. How should we validate colleagues? How should we validate colleagues? Should we validate colleagues right now? So what would be the use case here? It would be that if But the question, I guess, is a student can have colleagues only students, or we'll get an enumerable of user. I guess, yeah. So if we talk about colleagues, students can have only other colleagues or only other students as colleagues. So that would be students that really belong to the same class. So in that case, we can check the class. Maybe we can check by the class. But then teachers and staff members can also be colleagues. So checking by class is not necessarily correct. Yeah, what maybe do you have an idea? If you have any type of feedback, then just let me know. That would be really great. So how should we validate here the colleagues? Because my idea is that if this user is student, so if the user type is student, then all the colleagues here in this list should be also students. If not, should we just throw an error, or should we just remove? Should we just remove the users that are not students from the list? No, I guess we should give a feedback to the consumer. So to the class that basically uses this factory method, we should give a feedback that the list that they provided as colleagues is not correct. But then here maybe we'll have to do a custom validation sooner rather than later. I don't know, maybe we'll do that today, but yeah, we'll see. Right now, I guess that what we could do is let's just assign that, and we see here that and the way we assign that is actually because it's an enumerable, and we expose it through a private field, and this is this field colleagues. So we have to assign it actually to that field. So let's do this. So it would be user dot, and we'll assign it to colleagues, and this would be equal. So it would be colleagues, and let's use null coalescing operator, and if it is null, then we just want to create a new list of user. So it would be an empty list, of course, but in that case we also have to make this to list. That should do it. Okay. So then let's go one step further, and we have these friends. And actually friends, that's not really a lot of validation that we need to do here, because actually friend is something else. So a student can have friends that are also teachers or staff members, so that's not forbidden, I would say, because yeah, you can be also well have your teacher as friends. They are not your colleagues, but they could be your friends. Or at least on this social network. So what we can do is that we can do exactly the same thing. Basically here we don't really need to validate anything, only to check for null, and in this case we can simply use this null coalescing operator, and it would be friends to list, and if it is null, then I just want to have a new list of user. So it would be new list of user, and I guess that should do it for the friends. And last but not least, we have the friend requests, and for the friend request it's actually exactly the same thing. We just have to check for null. So in that case, yeah, we have here a user dot pending friend requests equals friend requests to list, of course, and if this is null, then I would just return a new list of user, and actually this is a list of friend requests. Yeah, and I guess that what is here wrong? Pending friend requests is, yeah, it of type is list of friend requests. So what did I mistype here? Non-invocable member. It's new, sorry. How can I even miss that? It's really new. But right now I guess that there is another problem that I see. Because we can't really call this toList, because that will throw an error if it's null, because we cannot call toList on null. So in this case we can't really just use this null coalescing operator, and we'll have to check for null, or use the ternary operator in this case. I guess we should use the ternary operator in this case. That would definitely make more sense, because this would throw a lot of errors if the incoming parameters are of default value null. So in this case it would be colleagues, and I would say that let's change this. So if colleagues not equals null, in that case, it would be colleagues.toList, else it would be a new list of user in this case. Yeah, that should do it. And right now what we achieve here is that we basically here this won't fail anymore, because once again, if we use this null coalescing operator like we did here, the problem is if friends is null, then this toList method will throw an error. So we can't simply use this type of operator, so instead we change this to be a ternary. So we say that equals friends not equals null. So if friends doesn't equal null, so is not null, in that case we just say we assign friends to list. In this case right now we can call the toList method. Otherwise, else we just return a new list of user. And I guess we should make the exact same change also here, because once again we don't want this to throw errors. So it would be a friend requests not equals null, and if this is true, so if it doesn't equal null, then we just friend requests toList. Otherwise we just want a new list of friend request. Yeah, and that should do it for the factory, I guess. So we throw some errors sometime. We make sure that when we want to work with lists, we don't leave the lists on null, because yeah, that would cause us some other issues, maybe just a little bit later when we want to add some behavior. But right now I guess that for the factory, at least for now, I guess that we should be fine. So we can work on another region. So let's make it region. It would be a public methods, because we have to implement a behavior for this aggregate, of course. And what type of behavior would we have here? So what actions should actually a user be allowed to do? And of course, I guess that one action that a user should be allowed to do is to add a friend. And then to add a friend, we basically need to create a friend request and to send it. But then that friend request should simply populate in the list of pending friend requests for the target user. So in this case, let me just look once again in this friend request class. How do we really create it? So we need a GUID which represents from. We need then GUID that represents to. And yeah, but in this case I guess that what we actually would need is I guess that we would need the target user as a whole, because we will be able then to add the friend request. So yeah, I guess I have an idea. So what we could do here is we would have a public. Let's for now it would return void. It will just add the user or add the friend request to the target user, and it would be called add friend. And actually the only thing that we would need to pass into this method, I guess it would be the target user, because that would be important. And then if we call this add friend, it's not static, so we will call it on an instance, and on the instance that we will call it, it will have an ID, and this would be the from, because this current object, this current user makes a friend request. Or let's call this method make friend request or send. I guess it's maybe better to call this send friend request. So this means that the current object sends a friend request to the target user. So in this case what we can do, I guess, is we can simply create a new friend request. var friend request equals, and we could say friend request.create, because we have a factory method here, and to this factory method what we actually need to provide is only the from user, so the user that is sending the request, which is the current ID, and we have to send the ID, the GUID of the target user, and then we add also the ID. And I guess that would create a friend request, although we have an error, no overload method takes, of course, because there was a typo here, it's dot, it's not comma. Yeah, that should do it right now. So right now we have a friend request, and I guess that the only thing that we can do is to simply use the target user object, because we already have it here, target user, and on the pending friend requests we would simply add this friend request that was just created. And this would mean that right now if we would save this type of information to the database, I guess that both instances should be tracked, and then also the list should be also populated in the database for the target user. But I guess this is something that we will have also to be a little bit more careful and think about it when we'll implement the database layer. But I guess that for now I guess that would do it. Because right now if we switch, if we think from the point of view of the target user, after this part we just have a friend request that was added to his list. Okay, I have a question. What are we going to use to our front end? Blazor serverless if we're going to use fast following. DDD, where will the layer run from? Okay, yeah, actually that's a really good question. It's a long one. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly what we will use for the front end. I think that we will go for Blazor, but it will be the Blazor that is also actually hosted by ASP.NET Core. So it is the full WebAssembly Blazor, but it is an ASP.NET Core server that serves basically Blazor to the browser. And the reason why I guess we'll do that is that in that case we'll be able to create a WebSocket connection via SignalR between Blazor and ASP.NET Core. And in that case, through that connection, we'll be able to support things like messaging or real-time interactions between users. So it is possible that we will use Blazor. And from domain-driven design perspective, Blazor is just a front end. So it's not really part of the domain at all. And if we look at the solution that we have right now, we have created here a solution folder which is called frontends. And here we have for now mobile and web, because we'll probably create frontends for both this type of terminals. But once again, the frontends, they don't actually belong to the domain. The only thing that really belongs to the domain is only our aggregates, our bounded contexts. These are the things that belongs to the domain. But all other stuff like infrastructure layer, database layer, front-end, application layer, even all those type of layers, they don't really belong to the domain. So it's basically totally outside of the domain. Okay, let's go back to. But thank you very much for the question. This was a very nice one. Thank you for the question, Robert, I guess. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go just a little bit further, and let's examine what we could do next. So once we send a friend request, I guess this case is handled right now. What we can do right now is, of course, we have to accept a friend request. So it would be public void accept a friend request. Okay, so what do we do when we accept a friend request? Well, in this case, I guess we just have to provide the friend request, or no, I guess we have to provide I guess we have to provide the user from, because we just need to know from which user the request is coming from, and in that case we can search in this pending friend requests. So what we can do here is simply, yeah, we can simply do it like that. So what we need here is a user. Actually, we don't even need the user. We can use just the GUID. So the only thing that we need here is the GUID of the from. So from which user did this friend request come, in order to be able to accept it. And in that case we can see var friend. Let's not do a lot of typos, and here we will just look into the list. So it will be pending friend requests, first or default, but here I just first or default. And here we just need to provide that we are looking for a friend request for which the user from, or how is it called here, from, would be equals to from. So if we find this type of user, we can just say here, for instance, if friend request equals null. So if we don't find this type of friend request, we can just for now once again throw a new argument exception and just say here that the friend request was not found. Okay, and otherwise, if we don't throw this exception, it means that that the friend request was found. So in that case, that we basically need to do one thing. But here I guess we have a problem, because what we will need to do is simply add the user. But you know, here we need a user. So here we need a user because we need to add this user to the list of user that represents a friend. It represents the friends, because friends is an enumerable of user. But maybe that's exactly the problem. That's exactly the problem. This I guess that in domain-driven design, this shouldn't be like that, because we are here right now on the user aggregate. So we are here on this user aggregate, but what we have here is our property that are of type enumerable of user. So in this case, for this aggregate, what do we actually really need? do we need here an enumerable of users? So do we need all the user instances, or do we actually just need a record to all the friends or the colleagues for that specific user? Because I guess that we just would need to have the IDs, so that would actually be enough. Because if you want, then I don't know, maybe in the front end to display the friends, then you would have to get those friends from the database. And then if somebody has 100 friends or 1,000 friends, you would have to make 1,000 calls just to get all the friends. Yeah, there's a lot of questions, you know, that I'm also not able to answer right now. Maybe that's not 100% okay how it is right now, but I guess for now we'll go further with that. So in this case, what we will need here is that we will need a user from, and in this case we will need here to specify our from, and we will need the ID, because we're looking after the ID. And then if we don't have an error, so if we don't throw the error, then there are basically two actions that we need to do. The first action would be to add actually this user to the friends, so it would be friends.add, and here we would add this from user, and then we would also have to delete the pending friend requests. So it would be pending friend requests, and here it would be remove, and we will remove the friend request that we just found. And I guess that would basically mean that we have a friend request, so that we accepted the friend request. Then of course we also maybe have this action public void. We can also reject, of course. Maybe I don't want to be friend with somebody, so it would be a reject friend request. And here once again what we would need would be the user from, and actually in this case we don't even need the entire user, because we just need to search for the friend request and remove it from the pending friend request list. So in that case I guess it would be enough to have a GeoID to identify the friend request. So our implementation would be var friend request would be pending pending friend request first or default, and then we will have to see that our friend request in this case the ID, so in this so from should be equal to from. That would, but no, that's not correct, because it's like that. I guess I'm just a little bit too tired right now, so sorry for all these things. So if we find the friend request, only if we find it. So if let's say if once again let's do like above. So if the friend request equals null, then we can, I don't know, simply throw an exception, throw new argument exception. As said, we'll come later to this, and we'll find, or we'll think about better solutions to handle this type of events where where the validation doesn't pass, because just throwing around errors is not really a very good pattern. But we'll think about it just a little bit later. So right now we just say here that friend request was not found. But if the friend request was found, what we have to do, actually the only thing that we have to do is simply go to the pending friend request and remove the pending friend request. And I guess that that should do it for now. So do you have any ideas what other type of behavior would we have on a user aggregate? So what should be a user able to do in the application? I guess that's actually the question that we're asking right now. What can actually a user do in our application? That's the question. I don't really have an idea right now, and you see that's one downside of trying to build a project following these domain-driven design principles, where a really key piece of what domain-driven design really is missing, and that key piece is the domain experts, and basically the ones that really know the domain, really know what they want in their application. So right now we would just have to play the domain expert and the developer at the same time, which is surely not a very good idea, and especially me, I'm not able sometimes to really think really clear about what this application should be able to perform. So I guess that's also a key learning point when it comes to domain-driven design. You can't really just use domain-driven design if you are missing the domain experts, because as said during the first episodes, in domain-driven design, experts or domain experts are actually part of the team and are a very important part of the team, because without them we don't really exactly know what we want to do actually, or what do we really need to do. So yeah, but right now we don't have a domain expert, we don't have a university teacher here that would tell us exactly what they would need, so we'll try to kind of go forward like that. But unless you don't come up with another idea, I guess that for now we are basically done with this user aggregate. Let's go once again through it. So we have some private fields that we use in order to expose some properties as enumerables, so that consumers are not able to add and remove items from the list. So actually the only way to add or remove items from the list is actually from this is what we need to implement, because we have here a list of colleagues, and then this aggregate should expose behavior that would make it possible to remove a colleague or to add a colleague, because that's surely something that we will need to do, of course. So in this case, let's make it a public void add colleague. Okay, and here what do we need? I guess we need it's a list of user, so we would need the user that we want to add as a colleague. So in this case, of course, we can just go to colleagues.add, and we add a user, and this means that we are able right now to add a colleague to that user. Then we have here public void, and here we can have a remove colleague. Remove colleague, let's hope it's correct. Then we will have also, once again, we need the user that we want to remove as a colleague, and then what we need to do is var x colleague, because if we want to remove it, it's not a colleague anymore. So in this case it would be let's search through the list, first or default. So what do we want to search here for? So we want to search a colleague for which the ID equals to user.id, so the ID of the user that and if this x colleague will be null, which could be a case, so let's take into consideration x colleague equals null. So in this case, what we can do here is simply we can say again, for now we will just throw exceptions, but we will come back to that and find better ways to handle this type of scenarios. So we'll see, we'll have a throw new argument exception, and here the argument would be, or the reason would be, that user was not found. Yeah, user not found. Let's keep it simple. But if we find the user, what we need to do is basically just remove it. So we'll have it colleagues.remove, and in this case we have then the user that we need to remove. So yeah, we just have, right now we have then the option to add a colleague and to remove a colleague. And I guess the exact same thing we'll need to do. So for friends we already did that, but it was called add or send friend request and accept friend request, and that would actually but we don't cover the remove friend. So we can actually send a friend request, which would be a certain way the equivalent of adding a friend to the list. But then we don't have, or I guess we don't have the, or yeah, we have this reject friend request, but we want to unfriend maybe somebody. We just want to unfriend somebody. So public void unfriend, which would be an action, and we would need to specify the user that we want to unfriend. And in that case we can simply go here to friends, var x friend would be, which search in the friends first or default, and we search for a friend which ID is equal to the user.id. And then if xFriend equals null, then we throw an error. Okay, and let's add also some information. Friend not found. But otherwise we just remove him or her from the list. So it would be friends dot remove, and in this case we just remove the xFriend. So yeah, that's some other behavior that we added right now to this aggregate. Let's see what other type of behavior do we want, do we actually need here. We also can assume that as in when a consumer wants to create a user, it is obliged, so it really needs to provide us the ID, the username, the type, the name, the email, and the phone, and the phone. So this means that actually for all other type of properties, they should be able to be modified or added after the user is created. So this means that we would have actually to expose behavior in order to be able to manipulate all these type of properties, because when we create the user first time, they could be null, but then maybe we just want to edit the user. We just gave the user a password, so in that case we should be able to add a password to the user. And exactly the same if we assign this student to a faculty, or the teacher to a faculty, or the staff member to a faculty, then we should be able to really update that information, and from that point on it should be part of the user. And that goes exactly the same for the student class, for instance, which is a very important type. So yeah, I guess we would have to add behavior for all of this. Otherwise our domain model is not quite gonna work. So let's take them one by one. Password. So in this case it's fairly clear. At a certain point we just want to add a password for the user. So we would have here public. Let's also return void here, and it would be set password. And in this case we would just take in a string that would represent a password, and we will add it. So we'll say that the user, so right now, so this will be called on a user instance. So in this case we can just say password equals password. because it has a private setter, but I should be able to set it because I'm in the same class right now. So it's no problem that it is private. Yeah, it is private. Okay, thank you for the answer. That was okay. I have another question, and it is very long. Might have to produce code samples to be very clear with my question. I don't know if you should type it here, and you have another platform which I can post it. Yeah, actually, if you scroll down just a little bit on my channel, you will see a section where I have posted all my social media accounts. So there you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Facebook, and yeah, maybe you can just send me that on Facebook. I don't think that if you want to post code samples, I'm not sure that that using this chat is really the best way. But just feel free to send me it, yeah, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you think it's necessary. So that shouldn't be a problem. But thank you very much, and I'm really glad that you have this type of questions. It's really important for me. Okay, so let's go then just a little step further. So, but if we have added this, but of course I guess I have a typo here. That's why I have this red squiggly line. That happens unfortunately too often to me. So, but if we have the option to set a password, we just also need to have the option to change password. Public void change password, and that would be once again right now very simple. MP string password, and here I would say that once again password equals password, and then we would also, I guess, set the password and change the password. I guess these are the only things that we would be really able to do on the password. So yeah, let's go back then to the factory and check the next one. So faculty. So at a certain point, at a later point, we might need, or we might want to add faculty to a certain user. So let's add it. In this case, it would be theoretically it would be simple public void. How should that be? Add faculty. Add faculty. Yeah, I guess add faculty would be okay. And then of course we would have to specify the faculty that we want to add. Now once again, if we get the faculty as an incoming parameter, then we already can be sure that the faculty is in a valid state, because when we create a faculty, we should handle all invariants for the faculty, and if somebody tries to create a faculty that is not evil, we should throw an error here. So this means that here in user, in the aggregate, when I get this faculty as an incoming parameter, then I don't really need to validate it, because I'm sure that if it's not null, it should be okay. So in this case, what I could do is simply assign the faculty to the faculty property. The only question is, should there be maybe any other constraints? If we want to add a faculty to a certain user, does this depend on some other properties? I guess not. So staff members would probably be able to add a faculty to a user if a faculty is already there. But right now, maybe the only thing that we would need to do is if we already have a faculty, then we shouldn't be able to add it, because in that case we should just expose behavior to modify it. So in this case, if the faculty already exists, so if a faculty, the property, is not equal null, so this means it has a value, in this case we will for now throw an argument exception, and we'll see faculty. Sorry, this is a string, so we have to put it in double quotes, of course. Specified faculty is already assigned to the user. So instead we need to expose behavior from this aggregate. That would be to modify or to change faculty. And since the faculty, but it should be void, sorry for that. So right now I guess we should also take a brief look into the faculty class, because it's an entity. Okay, so this means that we basically compare faculties for ID. So when we look for equality, we just check their IDs, which is how equality should be checked for entities in domain-driven design. So that is correct. In this case, what we would need, do we have here on faculty, we have add department, remove department, then departments.clear, and name. In description, edit faculty, but this means actually editing the faculty itself, and belongs to faculty. Yeah, that is the method that checks if a certain department belongs to a faculty. So yeah, here when we want to change faculty, but here it's maybe, I don't know, not change, but update would be update, make more sense as a name. I don't know, update faculty. So in this case we just want to update the property there, so the faculty. So in this case we would just need to take in the new faculty, and we just have to assign it to the faculty property. Of course, later we might come to the conclusion that we might need some validation here, but right now at this point really I don't know exactly what could we validate here. But we also maybe, if a user, I don't know, it's a student and finishes studies, and basically they still want to keep the user in the system, I don't know, for I don't know, reporting purposes or something like that, but they don't want that user to count against that faculty. For instance, if they just try to find out how many students are in a specific faculty, we might even want to remove the faculty. So it would be then a public void remove, I don't know, user from, or remove faculty from user. I guess when we talk with people in a faculty or in a university, they would rather say remove a user from a faculty. So in that case we will call it like that, and in this case we just need to set this faculty to null. And yeah, that's it. So basically this is how we would then remove. And I guess that the behavior regarding the faculty is okay right now. So let's go back and take a look here. What we have then, we have the class. So the class is said at the beginning, it can be null, but then we might want to add a user to a certain class, and then this user should have a certain class property. And let me check once again. The class is an entity, so it's based on ID. So yeah, in this case I would simply add behavior here. It would be public void add student to class. Sorry, not student, but yes, it's student, because only students can be added to a class, and this is something that we will have to also validate right now in these methods. And then we just need to take in the class instance. It would be called student class. So right now, once again, this is not a static method, so it is called on an instance of type user. So in this case we can make here some very basic validation, and if we say that if type not equals user type dot student, so in that case, so if the type of the student is not if the type of the user is not student, in that case we just can throw argument exception, and we can say here that, but what did I do wrong here? Argument throw new, sorry, yeah, it's about, forgot the new keyword, happens. And then here I would say, okay, only students can be added to a class. But if this is the student, then what we would have to do is say that the class equals student class. And right now the class is updated. And right now we would have similarly to expose behavior for public void. How should we call this method? The idea is that we just want to be able to move a student from one class to the other. For instance, if a student doesn't get enough credits to get to the next year, then he would basically automatically fall back to the class that comes from behind. So in that case we should be able to assign a new class to the student. So in this case we could simply name this method, but not assign new class, assign to new class. And actually right now I think that what we might need to do is we can just rename this method as assign to class. And then we don't need this method anymore, because right now each time we want to update the class, so if we want to set a new class for the user, then we would simply say assign to class, and we will specify the new class to which we should assign this user. So that would cover both the scenario where this class property is initially null for the student, but then we want to add the class to the student, and it also covers the scenario where the student already belongs to a certain class, but we want to change it. So then we assign the student basically to another class. So let's call it assign student to class. But what we would have to do here is remove the student from a class, and this would actually mean just set this class property to null. So it would be remove student from class, and actually here we don't even need something that as an incoming parameter. We can maybe just check, for instance, that if a class is null. So if it is already null, if it doesn't exist, we can just, I don't know, right now throw new argument exception. We'll come back to this type of handling inconsistent state, and we'll say here the student doesn't belong to a class, but if the student belongs to a class, then we would simply set it to null, and then of course later that change will be saved. So I guess that pretty much covers what we can expose for the class. So let's go to the next one. What do we still have here? Is there still a question here? No, I don't think. So let's go further. So then we have an enumerable of colleagues, but here we can basically add colleagues, remove colleagues. We can add friends, remove friends, send friends requests, whatever, and then friend requests. So this type of all these properties for which we have enumerables we already covered in our methods. In send friend requests, accept friend request, reject friend request, then unfriend, add colleague, remove colleague. So basically we covered that scenarios, or those scenarios. So I guess that from the behavior perspective right now on this aggregate, I guess that we should be maybe just on track, I guess. Yeah, I guess that that should do it. So I think that we could now go on and just try to maybe concentrate on another aggregate, because what are we able to do on a social media network or on a social media application? We actually are able to post a lot of things. So I guess that the idea of a post that should be a very good example for a next aggregate in our application. So in this aggregates, let's add a new, and we'll add a new folder in this aggregates, and here we'll call this a post aggregate. And here in this folder, let's add a new class, and this class would be simply called, I guess, only post. I guess that should be okay. So that shouldn't cause any problem. Yeah, so we have a post. Now we have, of course, to think about the post. What should we be able to implement here? Of course, this class should be public, and it will be, of course, of type entity. So it inherits from entity, and it will have also a GUID, and it will also have this iAggregate root, which is the marker interface that indicates that this is the aggregate root. So what we'll do right now, let's create a region, constructors and properties. Let's end the region, and let's implement a constructor here. But as I always do here in domain-driven design, the constructor is private because I will create a factory method for that. But what we'll need for sure here is an ID of type GUID that we will have to pass back to our base class. So yeah, that's I guess the basic setup for this post aggregate. But right now, let's think just a little bit what do we need actually for a post. And I guess that also on this application, in this so let's imagine we go back to school right now, so we study there. So if I have this type of social media app that on which I'm able to communicate with my colleagues, but also with other students and maybe with teachers, and maybe I want to share something. So what could I share? Of course I could share some text, but I would also be able to, I don't know, share photos from different events that I attend. I don't know, that could be a thing. And I guess that also posting videos would be also something. Maybe later we'll think about posting some more university specific stuff, like I don't know, like maybe for instance posting a schedule or something like that, because maybe teachers should be able to post schedules so that students would be able to check their schedule or to see what exactly their teacher have published. So of course it's very clear, at least for now, that we would need a post type, and that would be an enum. But if you remember, I'm not sure if you watched also the other episodes, we have opted for an approach here to create our custom enumeration class. So in our shared kernel, we have also defined this abstract base class, which is called enumeration, and we'll use this type of class in order to represent enumerations in our applications. So yeah, that's why here, if we go then to create a post type, let's add a new class, and it would be, let's call it post type, I guess, and it would be public, and it would inherit from enumeration, which is our custom base class. And of course, we would have to use probably add some using statement here to the shared kernel types, which is expected. So one thing that I want to do is here, I want to post a constructor, but this constructor will be private. And what we would have to here is we will need an int value, and we will need a string how was that called in the enumeration? Because I don't recall it. It was called description. So yeah, let's string description, and we should pass that to the base. Value and description. Okay, but right now we could just format a little bit. What's wrong right now with my cursor? Because we actually don't need this entire constructor body anymore, so we can just move it on the same line so that we save some space, and I guess that should do it. So right now we should just create the types that we have here. So they should be then of course public, but they should be read-only. Public static also, so that we want them to behave really like real enums, like default enums. So it would be post type, and the first one should be text, and that would be equal to new post type. And here we'll provide the value 0 because this is the first one, and we'll provide the value like text post. Okay, so then we will have a public static read-only post type, and that would be, let's make it video, and it would be new post type, and this would be 1. And it would be what would it be? Video post. And then let's make just another one, but here I have a typo. Yeah, that should do it. And then I have here public static read-only post type, and it would be a photo. And let's make this to new post type, and here we'll have the value 2 because it would be the next one, and that would be a photo post. So yeah, that would be it for the enumeration. So we can now go back to our post, and here if we start to think about properties, so if we take in the ID, we will need a property for ID. So it would be a public, it would be of type, but we already have it on the base class, sorry, so we don't need to specify the ID. But what you would need to specify is a public post type. Let's call it type as a name, and get, and as we always do here, we will have a private setter so that we won't be able to modify this property from the code that will consume our classes. So what would be the next thing about a post that we would have? A post with let's right now think about how we interact on Facebook. So when we want to post something, we usually have a description, I guess. So maybe the description would be important, or text. We post a text, no matter if it is a text post, if it is an image or a video, we can post some text to it. So yeah, let's make it like that. String text get private set, and then each post also has an author, but the author would be right now the user, but the user is a different aggregate, so we don't really want to bind aggregates together like that in domain driven design. Because what I would do right now, it would be, I would say public user, and it would be the author, of course with private set. But then here the problem is, as said, that this user is actually another aggregate root, and it's really not a good thing to have such circular, I would say, dependencies between aggregates roots. And if we think better about it, what we actually need to know about about the user that posted it. Let's think from the perspective of the post itself. Do we really need to know all the information, like faculty, like I don't know, departments, like class, like friends? Do I really need to know anything about or everything about the user in order to be able to have a valid post entity? And I guess that's no. And what would I need? So what would be the minimum required properties that I would need for a user so that I could have a valid post, a consistent post? I'm thinking right now, I guess that actually the only thing that we need is the ID of the user, because that's actually all. I don't think we really need anything else. Or maybe the name, but still we have to get it from the database at a certain point, and then it would be probably easier to get it via the ID or to search it via the ID. Then the name, as I said, we could have users that have the exact same name. So if we want to search for all the posts for a certain user, if we use the name for the criteria, then we would get posts for all the users that basically share the same name. So that would be surely not be very accurate at all. So yeah, I guess that actually the only thing that we really need to know here about the user is the GUID. We just need to know the ID of the author, nothing else actually. Okay, and then what other thing we would like maybe to have here is maybe a URL to the media. If it's text, then this would probably be null, but otherwise we would surely need a URL for that. Let's make it a public. And for that we actually have a class which is URI, and I guess that we could actually use this class, media URL. Why I think it's a good idea to use this class here is that when you want to create basically of object of type URI, it's actually already doing the validation. So we don't really have to bother anymore about validating if a certain media URL is correct or not. Because when the consumer that will want to create a post will have to create this media URL, it will be obliged to provide a valid one. So I guess that it's a good idea to use this URI right now. Of course, we will have to think, but we'll handle that when we come to the idea of databases. But we will have to handle. We would also see how we really persist it in the database. But I guess that we would be able to run some transformations there directly, or entity framework core using fluent validation, so that we only write the URL itself, or so the value itself, so not that we don't create a separate table for URI. But yeah, I guess that's okay for now. So what other things do we need for a post? I guess here it's important to know maybe when was the post created. And I guess that this date can even maybe nullable. If we create a post, I mean, if we create a post, I guess it can be nullable, because I think right now about the scenario. So right now I want to create a post, yeah. So I write some text somewhere, and then I hit a button. Of course, that request will go through the entire application layer, whatever. But then at a certain point, there will be probably a command handler that would need to create a post. So this would be a new post, so it won't look in the database for it. So it means that basically, if that command handler wants to create a post, it actually doesn't really need to provide a date, because we can provide that automatically here if the date is null. I guess that would make sense. So let's make it like that. So it would be public date time, but let's make it nullable, and it would be date created. So my idea is that what I would like to do is to validate or set the times we want to set this date times from this post class itself. So we don't want that anybody would give that to us, except if it's coming from the database directly. So in that case, let's have date time last modified, get private set. Yeah, and here I certainly mistyped something. Date, sorry, date time. Okay, so Robert, you are saying on the media URL property, I think we should allow our users to post multiple media objects, like 3 photos in a post. Also, basically to have a media gallery. I say we should have a media gallery maybe, and I guess it's a good idea. And in that case, what we would need to do is make that something like an array. But if we make it something like an array, that would mean actually exactly like we had it for the user, that consumers from outside would be able, even if the property is with private set, it's actually read only, but they can add things to the array not, because the array is fixed size. So you can't just add something to an array. So yeah, I guess let's leave it like that for now. Because right now, but what do we do then when we want to add a new item to? Because maybe it's something like a kind of a dynamic media gallery, in which we'll be able to add maybe another image at a later point. So in that case, we would need to be able to have here something dynamic to be able to add URIs. So in that case, having this as an array is not really an option. So yeah, I guess we'll do it like we did for the other stuff. So we will also use private fields. We'll do it like that. So we will have a private, and that field would be read only, because we won't set it once it's set. We won't change it, so it would be private read only, and it would be of type list, and it would be a list of URI. And here it how should we call it, because in this case we can't call it media URL, but we can call it media URLs. We can call it like that. And in that case, what we would do here, this would be of type enumerable of URI, and then we'll have to just change that a little bit. Here the setter we won't need anymore, because we will not set anything here. At any point, we will just expose this property through the field, so it would return media. But how did I call it? Oh my god, I don't name fields like this. I don't know why I did it. So it will be media URLs. That's the way I usually name fields. So it would be return media URLs. Guess something what is wrong here? Of course, because it's the getter, but the getter is like that. Sorry. Of course, it needs a code block, the getter. Of course, and it's like, so yeah, right? So right now we expose an enumerable of media URI. So this means that we can basically have several URLs for medias, so that we can add something like a gallery. So it can be either none, it can be one URL, or it could be several. So I guess all those scenarios would be right now accommodated in this post class. But yeah, that's correct. Thank you very much for the idea. I think it was a very good one. Okay, let's then go just one step further. And okay, we have a date created, we have a date when it was last modified, but then what we also have on Facebook are comments, likes, and things like that. So I guess that those would be of course also enumerables, but these should be their own types, I guess. So let's just create. Let's start with comment, because we could be able, or students should be able to comment on posts, or also users generally, not only students, also teachers, but also staff members. So yeah, let's, in this post aggregate folder, let's add a new class, and let's make this comment, this class comment. It will be public. So what would it be, the comment? Would it be a value object, or would it be an entity? What would it be? My first hunch, or what I would do, it's my first feeling, I guess, that that should be a value object, because a comment is actually basically just a bunch of properties, like the author, like the message, the date when it's created, and the last modified date. And this is the only way in which we should able to identify comments as equals. Or should we be able to identify a comment by ID? I don't know that if this makes sense. Oh, I see the comment as a value object right now. It could be that tomorrow I wake up and I see it different, but let's start with a value object. So it would be a value object. But if you have a different idea, if you think that it should be an entity, well, then just say it, but also try to basically explain why you should think it should be an entity and not a value object. So we have implemented this method that comes from the base class. So what we would need here is probably a constructor that will still make private, because we'll expose factory methods. So let's make a field, a region here, constructors and properties, and we will end this region somewhere here. Okay. And yeah, what do we need on these comments? So we would need an author, but once again, when we need the author, it's exactly the same problem that we had when we were here and we were thinking about the author of the post. So it's exactly the same thing like for the author of the comment. What do I really need from a user to be able to post a comment? And I guess I'll still go with the GUID right now. Once again, the main problem why we shouldn't add a user as a property on the comment is because the user is already an aggregate. So aggregates are kind of like units of containment in domain-driven design. They shouldn't be just placed around other value objects or other aggregate roots. So we just reference them by ID. So yeah, let's do that in that case. Where we're a comment, so we would need a first property. It would be public, and it would be of type GUID, and it would be the author ID. Get, but of course we need semicolon there. Private set. Okay, and then what else do we need actually for the comment? We need a message, which would be a string, I guess. That's not too complicated. Public string message get, and private set, of course. And what would we need here is, once again, we have a date for the comment and a last modified, because we might need to be able to modify comments. Maybe I did a typo and I want to change that. I want to edit my comment and make it right. So yeah, let's implement the idea of dates. And dates, once again, will be nullable and be date created, because also a comment gets created on a certain date. And it would be, but I said it should be nullable, so yeah, let's add the question mark in that case, of course. Otherwise it's not nullable. So public date time last modified get private set. Okay, and I guess that from the properties perspective, that's mostly it. What we need. Let's add a new region, which would be the factories, and region, of course. And here let's add a factory for that. Public static, we return a comment, we say create. So what we would need here for a comment to have passed in this factory method is actually the ID of the author, and we would need the message, string message. But right now we have to think about two scenarios. So one scenario when we create a brand new comment, I would say, so that was not previously saved to the database, then we actually don't need a date time. But if we want to create a comment that was previously saved in the database, then it will have it should have a date created and last modified. So I guess that in this case we can just make this date times default properties. So we have a date time, which is nullable, which is then a date created. So this means if this comment is totally new, it was never in the database, then the consumer or the class that would call this factory method can simply not provide this date created, and it goes similarly for the other one. So it would be date time and last modified, and that could also be null. So what we can do in this case is simply well, we can return a comment. Let's create a comment for comment equals the comment. Okay, and then we should try to set different type of things on this comment. So it would be, but let's make it camel case, not Pascal case. So it would be comment.id, author ID, and that would be equal to the author ID. Okay, then what do we still need? Okay, I see that you have some other thing. I think that comments should be entities because we might have to identify them by ID. Think of when they have replies, those replies will need to have a reference to a comment which they are replying to. Yeah, I guess you are right. The only thing is if we want to allow comment threads like we have on Facebook. But I guess that yeah, you are totally right. You are totally right. But in that case, we would also have a list of replies to that. Yeah, I guess you're right. That's a good point. I guess that's a good point, because if you want to handle replies, you would have to reference them somehow. Cool. Let's make it as an entity. No big change here. It would be entity of GeoID. Okay, and then here, what do we have? We would need, of course, we need an ID, of course, and we'll pass it to the base. So that would do it for now. And anything else, I think it could actually remain the same. The only thing is that we would need also here a GeoID and an ID for the comment, and then we would pass that ID further to this and in that case we don't have this get atomic values, so we can simply get rid of that. Okay, so what we want to do here is right now create a comment. We have the ID, we pass it in the constructor, so we don't have to bother about it anymore. Then the message, comment.message equals message, and then it comes for this date created, and here we can simply, I guess here we can use that null coalescing operator, and we can say that comment dot date created equals, and we see here date created. But if date created is null, then we simply want to assign date time, and I usually want to save anything in UTC now, and then if needed to support different time zones, well, that would be then handled at the application layer. This is not something that the domain should be concerned about, I guess, unless you're building something like a calendar or a clock application or things like that. Okay, and I guess that the same thing would be for the last modified. Last modified would be equal to last modified, but if that last modified is null, then it was modified actually just now, because actually when we create the comment, we can also say that it was modified. The only difference is that when we will modify the comments, when we will add it afterwards, we will just update the timestamp for last modified, I guess. So I guess that's how we'll proceed with that. And yeah, so we have this covered this topic about date created and last modified. We'll also have to return this comment, of course. Return comment. And now back to your idea. So if we have threads, so if we support replies to a certain comment, I guess those are actually comments like this one, but then those comments could have replies to it themselves, but then we would have maybe to set some at the application level, probably in the UI or maybe at the application layer. We'll have to actually set a limit for the depth of this threading, I guess. But I think that this is not really something that we would have to take into consideration in the domain. I guess what we can take into consideration in the domain, and I guess that it wouldn't be anything wrong, I guess. Here in this case, I would see it would be public. It would be a GUID IEnumerable. And here it would be replies, and we'll implement this as we did with all IEnumerables. We'll have a get where we'll implement return replies. So we will have to create it first. So let's go here, private read-only list of GUID would be replies, and then we'll return here the replies, of course, and the setter we don't really need it anyhow. So what we would do here then is we will also need an IEnumerable of GUID, which would represent the replies. And that would be also null, so it could be null because there might be comments that don't have actually a reply. So in that case, what we will need to do is also to set the list here. So in this case, we would have to we would say that the comment.replies would be equal to replies. So here we'll use the ternary operator once again. We see that, so if the replies so equals replies, so if replies equals null, then we'll let's define if replies doesn't equal null. So if replies is not null, it is a list or something like that. In that case, we just add replies. Otherwise, sorry. So otherwise we just create a new list of GUID. That would be empty, of course, but it would be a list of GUID. But then of course the replies would be to list, because we receive it as an enumerable and we want it to make it as a list. Okay, but what is the problem here? Cannot be assigned, okay, in the constructor of the class which the field defines of a variable. Okay, but why is that so? So because we made it read-only, but we also made the others read-only. How was that for the user? How was that for the user? They were still read-only, so no, they weren't read-only. Of course they weren't read-only. Of course they weren't read-only. So it would be just private without the read-only. And in this case, of course, I guess we should be able to assign the replies. And then of course, if you want to get the messages, then well, we'll have to think about how to do that in the database. As said, theoretically, when we design according to domain-driven design, we shouldn't really care about how other layers would have to work with this domain model. That here we also, this last modified is a nullable. That is an error. I would expect that one would go away right now, but it actually didn't. So I still have an error somewhere, but I don't see where. But let me just make this just a little bit larger. Of course I missed a semicolon there. Of course. This happens when you usually work with auto-implemented properties in C#. That's, I guess, a very cool thing in comparison to Java. But if you mostly work with auto-implemented properties, then well, typos are something that you could expect. Okay, so I guess that that was really a very valuable opinion of you, that we should add the comments as entities, and then as a consequence of what you said, we just added also here an enumerable that contains a list of replies. And purely theoretically, each comment in that list could contain its replies, and that one could contain its replies as well, and so on. But in this case, we'll just take care about that. I guess maybe at the application layer level, where we will then simply, I don't know, set a certain threshold to the nesting of comments, that we allow, I don't know, 2 levels or 3 levels maximum, because otherwise it would get way too cramped, and that would be surely not okay at all. So I guess that for the comments right now, from the factory perspective, I guess that we might be just there. So that's what we actually need. But of course we need to think about behavior right now. We need to think about behavior. So what are we able to do with these comments? Let me just make this smaller again. Let's create a new region. Let's name it public methods and region. And here, so let's start once again from the beginning. We have there a message. So we certainly will need to be able to modify the message. And basically, when we want to edit a comment, it would mean that we just want to modify the message of it. So yeah, let's make a method public void. Let's call that edit comment, because if I recall correctly, also on Facebook, if I want to modify my comment, I have that edit button, I guess. And then the only thing that we need to do here is, of course, we need to take in the message, the new message, string updated message, and then we'll simply assign it message equals message. And one other important thing here is, but not message, updated message, sorry. And I guess that what we need to do else here is to set the last modified. So in that case it would be last modified. It would be with the current date and time. Of course, we'll always work in this application with UTC. As said, once again, when it comes to the front end or to the application layer, we'll do the time conversions as they are requested or needed. But right now actually is it's how it will be. What do aggregate means? Okay, thank you very much for the question. So in domain-driven design, aggregates are basically units that contain a certain information that should be updated or modified together. So let's take this example of the user aggregate that we have already done. So having an aggregate in domain-driven design means that we actually need, so this is the aggregate root, and when it comes to a user, all these properties depend basically on the user itself. So when you save a user, or when you update a user, or when you generally work with a user, you just need to keep track of all these properties. And the whole idea of having such aggregates is that basically here we would also control the so-called invariants. So at the aggregate level, so in the aggregate root, we will basically make sure that our aggregate, our user, is already on a valid state. So we will implement a lot of validations to make sure that that names are correct, that classes are correct, that email addresses are correct, and so on. So basically aggregates are a unit of data storage, let's say, in domain-driven design. But of course we have here a lot of navigation properties, I would call them right now. So this would result in a lot of different tables, but every time that we will save something, we will save the entire aggregate to the database. Okay, so those are like models in MVC. Yeah, it's like models in MVC, but actually it's a little bit different, because usually when we talk about models in MVC, we just think about well, really very anemic domain models that just have some methods, or sorry, some properties on them, and that's it. But in domain-driven design, we actually concentrate mostly on behavior. And as we can see, behavior means in .NET actually methods. So if we look into our aggregate right now, we see that we will have a lot of different methods, like send friend request, accept friend request, reject friend request. So we concentrate on behavior. How does this user aggregate behave? But as a concept, yes, they are still domain models, only that here we follow the domain-driven design principles and patterns, and try to apply them to our specific domain model, which in this case is a little bit more complex that you would usually have in most MVC applications. But in the end, the very important thing here to note is that you will have then a front end for this domain model, which means that we would probably have, or you could have something like an MVC application that exposes this type of information to the front end. So it's not really exclusive. It is the model, the domain model, but we create it by following some very strict and proven patterns and practices, which are called domain-driven design. But thank you very much for asking that. Okay, let's go back just a little bit to our post. No, to our comment, because we just went to this edit comment. Okay, you're welcome, sure. Just ask anytime you want. I'm really pleased when there are questions, and also when you come maybe with suggestions, with things that we might want to add to our application and things like that. It's really important. I really want to make this dynamic. I don't really have upfront all the ideas that I want to implement in this application, so it just evolves with the stream, and your contribution is very, very important to that. Okay, let's just think one more second about this this comment. So what should we be what should we be able to do with a comment from behavior perspective. So yeah, it's what we want to build. It's actually a social network, but we want to follow these principles that are called domain-driven design, which are very specific. But if you are on my channel, you can go to the videos, and then you will find a collection which is called Social Network with DDD, and there you will find all the episodes that we previously created. This is episode 4, so you will find episodes 1 to 3 right there, and really the first episode is only about explaining what are the domain-driven design principles that we want to actually apply in this application. So I strongly encourage you to go there and just to watch those videos to better understand what we actually want to do here. So what's actually our goal, and I guess I'll continue right now to I really want to finish at least with this comment entity. And here let's say we have the possibility to edit a comment, but what other type of behavior do we need here? We need, of course, some behavior regarding to these replies. And we can reply to a comment, but we can also delete our reply. So I'm on Facebook, I guess I'm able to delete my comment or my reply to a comment. So I guess we should model that as behavior. So in this case it would be public. Let's make it also void, and here would be add reply. The reply should be just a comment that we should be able to. But actually we hold here just a list of GUIDs of the replies. So what we need here to take in is a comment ID actually. And then we can simply can make our replies, add, and let's call add, and we add the comment ID. So in this case we have a new reply to our comment. Then we have a very similarly public void or delete comment, because when I'm on Facebook the option is to delete it. That's what I recall. And what we need here is once again the comment ID. It should be of type GUID. So what does remove mean? It means that we should simply replies, well, we should find it first. Var comment equals replies dot first or default, of course. And what we want to look here is for a reply where reply equals comment ID. And if comment is null, so if we didn't find it, we will just throw new argument exception. And let's just say here for now comment not found. And if this is not the case, then we can simply say replies dot remove, and here we can just remove the comment. But why? Of course I have a typo here. That's why I have the squiggly line. Okay, we can also add a like. Yes, in fact, I was saying just when I was on post, I was saying that we would need the comments and likes, and I guess those will name those reactions or interactions, I guess, something similar, and we'll construct them similarly to the comments. But I guess, and please let me know if you do agree with that or no, but I'm fairly sure in this case that for interactions we should be able to consider them value objects. Is there a possibility of working with you on the app? Actually, that's a very good question. I really didn't think about it, but I publish it to a repository, and in fact, if you scroll down on the channel, you will see there a panel which is called GitHub or something like similar, and there you can see the repository to which I push all the changes that I do after each stream for this app. So yeah, I guess that should be possible, but just let me think about it until I might be doing the next stream, because I'm streaming fairly often. I'm not only streaming this app, I'm also streaming something for let's say more a beginner level with a very basic MVC API. I also stream about well, creating a Star Wars application in Blazor WebAssembly only. So I stream all kinds of stuff, but actually I didn't think about it, so thank you very much. That was actually very insightful. But I guess we could work together on this application. I guess that would be even a very good idea, both for me and both for you, and maybe like have code reviews that we do. Okay, yeah, but it's no problem if you worked on MVC. Right now we are modeling the application. MVC is an architectural pattern that is specific for web applications. In our case, the web application will only be the front end. So in fact, you see that we have here several folders in our solution, and one of them is called front ends. This is something that we will add most probably at a later point when our domain model is modeled. But then when we add the front end, it could be very well be an MVC application. So if you worked on MVC, you surely had the project there that was called something like domain. So you can imagine that we are working on right now is the domain itself. Later, when we implement the front end part, well, yeah, we could definitely use MVC. But I think we might be maybe use something more exciting like Blazor, which is very new, and it's in my opinion very cool, because you just can build you can just build single page applications with real single page application behavior by writing only C#, and that's what I really feel is really great. So yeah, but that's only the front end to it. Right now we are just modeling the domain itself. Okay, so we are also able to delete a comment right now. So that would be okay. I guess that, but no, here it would be not delete comment, but delete reply. Sorry, because right now we just want to delete a reply. So here we add the reply, and here we delete the reply, of course. And then if we want to edit the comment, we have this possibility to edit the comment. But then if we want to delete the comment, actually the comment we won't delete from here. The comment we will delete from the post aggregate root itself. Let me show that. Once again, if you have then a better idea, maybe you should tell me, but right now I just want to showcase you what I think about it. So what we would have here in the post, it would be something like public, sorry, not public, because it will be a private field, private, and I would actually like to work with you on the app anytime I'm free during the day. If you're decide that you want to work, I'm all up for it, and I felt love. Okay, yeah, sure, sure. I guess I would like to do that, but I also have to think about it, how to really implement this and how to really work on this. So this is why just maybe give me some time, maybe 1 or 2 days. But then if you keep coming to the stream, or maybe if you're writing me a message, or you have on this channel also all my links to all my other social networks, so you can write me anywhere. So yeah, just let's keep in contact, and I'll surely announce during the next streams how we could work on this application further, because I also think that this is a very important thing. But right now I just want Robert, okay, thank you for asking for us to get our hands dirty. Fracture code, really want to work on this. Oh, I'm glad, Robert. I'm really glad that you also want to do that. I'm really happy with that. So yeah, that's something that I would definitely think about. Exactly, it's not about if I want to do it, but it's about how we want to do it. So that's all I have to think about, actually. Not if, but how we want to do it. But coming back here right now, coming here back right now to this, how I wanted to implement these comments. So it would be here a list of comment that would be called comments, of course, and then when we will have the factory, right now we don't have a factory right now, but my idea is, let's add also the property for that. It would be public I enumerable of comment, and it will be comments get. No, here we implement it. We don't implement it with auto implemented properties. We will explicitly implement our getters and the setters, or exactly the getter, because we don't really want a setter here. It's just that we don't really want to set it. We just add or remove items from this list, and that's basically everything. But my idea was that when I want to delete a comment, I don't delete a comment itself. I delete a comment from its post. So basically, if I want to delete a comment from a post, I just have to remove it from the list. So this is why I don't need to implement a delete comment method in the comment itself, because a comment cannot self-delete itself, I would say. The comment is there, it is made. But right now, if I go to post and if I remove a comment from this list, then the comment will be removed also from the database when we implement the database. So I guess that this is the scenario how this delete comment or remove comment would work. We just remove it from the post. So this is why, coming back to this comment, we have the ability to add, to edit the comment. We have the ability to add replies, but I guess that the date created and last modified we change, however, each time that we change the comment itself or the message of the comment. The only thing that we still have here is no, I guess that's basically it. So I don't see anything else that we could add to the comments right now. So I don't see anything else that we could add to this comment entity right now. So I guess the comment is done. And then, sorry, let's also go back to post. Similarly to what we have created for comment, it would be also for the interaction. But let's then create a new class here, add class, let's call it interaction. Interaction would be something like, okay, I like this post, I don't like this post, I love this post, and so on. So things similarly to that. But in order to have an interaction, I guess that that would be a value object, because we wouldn't have an interaction that belongs to a certain interaction. An interaction is just an interaction that is made at a certain point in time, but it actually really doesn't hold any other type of information. So in this case, our interaction would be a value object, and this value object, I guess, will have also very easy implementation. The only thing that I guess we will need an interaction type, and the interaction type would be an enumeration. Let's just implement the base class, the abstract class with get atomic values. We'll implement this method just a little bit later, but right now we need to create a class for the interaction type. Okay, and this class would be an enumeration. Enumeration is a custom base class that we created here in the shared kernel. It's enumeration, and here this is an abstract base class, and this is what we actually implement right now. My idea, or the idea behind this type of classes, and if you check my YouTube channel, I also have a video explaining this and really why we need, or why we prefer to use a custom enumeration class. But the idea is that we want to use this custom enumeration class, or our custom enumerations, to avoid the default enums that we have in C#, so or in .NET. So where are we right now? It's interaction type. yeah, it's interaction type. Okay, let's implement it. So what we need here is a constructor. In the constructor we need an int value and we need a string description, and we just pass them to the base class, value and description. Okay, and then we have to create the interaction types, and as we did for all our enumerations in our model so far, it would be not private because we want to expose them public, but they would be read-only. It would be interaction type, and that would be what types of interactions do we have? Let's have likes like we have on Facebook. It would be new interaction type, and we'll give the value of 0 and the text of like. What type of interactions do you think we could have on a social media network that is targeted for a university? So it's a very specific type of social media network. It's not a general purpose one like Facebook, but it's only for a university. But what other type of interaction? Note. What would note mean? Take is as in take it as a note, or then maybe, I don't know, should we call it noted interaction, because interactions usually should specify an action, or the word that we use should specify an action, like it's actually a verb, or dislike, or cheer, or I don't know, sad is not a verb in Facebook. But note, I guess it could be I will name it noted right now, but we can change this later if needed. New interaction type, that would be 0 and then the text noted. Okay, what other type of interactions can we have? Actually, it doesn't really matter, so maybe when we come up with new ideas for interaction types, then we can simply come here, maybe noted, but then make an user aggregate notebook. You mean like a grade book where you get all your exam scores and things like that. But that, I guess, that would be a totally separate bounded context in our domain. It would be a bounded context that would implement only the logic that regards a grade book. I don't know. Yeah, I guess we will come back to these interactions, because the idea of this type of enumeration class is that we can add whenever we want or whenever we need. We can add a new item in this enumeration and our code will not break. If we do this with enums, more often than not our code will break. So yeah, we can come here and add what other type of interactions we come to think of also later, because that wouldn't affect our code at all, which is a very important aspect of using these custom enumeration classes. Okay, so let's go back to this interaction. So our interaction, let's make it have a constructor, because we'll need this, however, for entity framework core later. And we'll have a property which would be interaction type, and let's call it type get private set. That's it. And then we just need the ID of the author. So it would be public, it would be a GUID author ID, and that would be the author of the interaction, of course. So, oh my god, let's get and private set. So we still work with full encapsulation. Then I guess those two are the only properties that we actually need on this type of interaction. In this case, in this yield return, we can in this get atomic values, we can just yield return the type, and we can just yield return the author ID. Okay, so one other thing that we would need is to add the factory. Yield. That's a very interesting question, and I guess I'll go into it maybe next time, because I guess there would be some different things to explain. Yield is basically a keyword that you use when you want to create custom enumerations, or when you want to create methods that return an enumerated value. Meaning that if you want to create a method and if you want the output to be able to put it in a for each loop, for instance, in that case you would use an yield return, and what this means is that basically this method returns one value at a time. So first time when the iteration goes through it, it returns the type. The second time when the iteration goes through it, it returns the author ID. When the third time that the iteration goes over this method, it simply says I don't have anything else to yield and to return. So this is the keyword that you basically use in .NET when you just want to create, as said, or to return innumerable values from a certain method. And you could basically use this get atomic values in a for each statement. Like for instance, let's have here, like, I don't know, private, I don't know, let's make it void example. And here in this method, what you can do is, for instance, you could do for each var item in get atomic values. And here you could do something, I don't know, like whatever, console write line. Right now we are not in a console application, so we are not able to really display this item, but I guess you get the idea. The idea is that if we use this yield return, we just return an enumerated value. So this means that we can basically use it in a for each loop, or also in a for loop, and iterate through each element that this method yields and returns to us. So it will be the first time the type, and then the second time the author ID. So yeah, that's the main idea of yield return. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm really glad you asked. Let's delete this example because we don't really need it anymore. Okay, so yeah, we've implemented this. So the only thing that we still need to implement here is right now the factory for that, and it would be public static interaction create. And that would be very simple to implement, because in this case the only thing that we need to take in as an incoming parameter is an interaction type and the GUID of the author, and then we simply return a new interaction, and here we can let's add a semicolon, and we say here that type equals type, and the author ID equals author ID, and yeah, that should do it for. And basically with interactions, they are not something that we can simply modify, because if we want to unlike a post, that would be, if we go to the post, it was similar to this. We would have a list with interactions, so it would be a private read-only list of interaction. Okay, and then we would have a, similarly to what we had before, we would have a public enumerable of interaction, but without the typo if possible. And here we have to give a name to that, and it would be yeah, interactions simply. Sorry for that. And here we'll also implement the getter, and it would be return interactions. So that should do it. And basically when we want to unlike a post, or like we do also on Facebook, we just remove that specific interaction from this list, and that's basically it. So this is why on the interaction itself we don't actually need to add anything else, I guess. Okay, let's think about another thing that we will need, but I guess that mostly that should do it. So I guess maybe we should just add some methods that kind of like aggregate maybe things like, I don't know, number of comments, number of interactions. Those properties would be easy to implement. So it would be, because I want to know how many interactions or comments a certain post has, so that would be a public, let's make it an int number of comments, and this actually is also something that we would implement with a custom getter, and here we would just return comments.count. So this will return the number of comments, and similarly if we see here public int number of interactions, and we implement the getter, and it would be return, this would be interactions.count, I guess. Yeah, so that would be it. So now I think what we would need to create is to create the factory for this aggregate, to think about the validations that we want to make at this aggregate. Let's see, I still have errors. Let's make them disappear. Of course I just forgot the semicolons here. I always do that. Of course we have to specify semicolons because we are in a code block. And yeah, that's it. And guys, I think that what do you think about using .NET for backend in 2020? Because we have a lot of things we can use for backend today. I think that .NET is actually a very good idea, and if you watch the benchmarks on and different things on several different frameworks, I think maybe Node.js is the only one that sometimes is faster than .NET Core, but other than that, .NET Core is really powerful. It really runs natively on each platform, on each operating system. Yeah, I think that actually .NET, especially .NET Core, is actually, well, a very good choice, I would say, and a very solid choice at the same time for the backend. I surely wouldn't choose Java at all. I surely wouldn't choose PHP at all. Maybe Node.js. For that one I would maybe be just a little bit more open and willing to really take that into consideration, especially in different scenarios and circumstances. But .NET Core, I think right now it's yeah, because PHP is kind of like first of all not very friendly with the object-oriented principles, and it's really difficult to really keep a solid approach to PHP projects. Then they have a lot of different issues, I would say, that could, or it's easier to get into security vulnerabilities using PHP, because that's basically server-side scripting actually. So yeah, it's, and if you go to the Stack Overflow survey, they make each year a survey regarding the programming languages. You will see that for the past 5 or 6 years PHP is totally declining. So right now I guess it's only WordPress that kind of still keeps it alive a certain way, but other than that PHP is not something that would be solid for I don't know, really important and global applications. I mean, Facebook was originally written in PHP, but they went away from it. So yeah, it's not something that I would go for, and it's also not that fast. I guess it's the slowest of the backend options that we have out there. Yeah, good. I guess it's fairly late, at least for me. I don't know. By the way, where are you from, you two guys? Robert and it's Loft, or it's, yeah, from Croatia. Okay, nice to meet you. So it says, I guess it's fairly late also in Croatia. It's just 1 hour before Romania, where I am. So it should be 10:30 or something like that. And Robert, because Robert, are you still there? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Robert is still there, but if you're still there, then just let me know where are you from. I'll be curious to hear more about it. But yeah, I guess that would be all for today. So I'm from South Africa. Oh my god, that's far away. But it's, yeah, also 2030, but in the southern hemisphere, so a long way out, but still around the same time zone, so that's at least nice. Yeah, how are you holding up in South Africa? Is everything okay with the pandemic? Because I know in Europe we were fairly locked down, especially in Romania. I don't know exactly in Croatia, but now things start to get better. But I'm really glad that you joined from South Africa. And how did you find this stream, Robert? And also it's Loft. How did you find the stream? I'm really curious about that. So, yeah. Okay, what I still wanted to say is, okay, I randomly scrolled through the science and technology. Okay, developing apps in C#. Okay, nice. Oh, it's actually nice that I was featured in that category, because sometimes if you have too few viewers, that you just don't get listed there under recommended. You just have to order them from, I don't know, list viewers. And that's not really helping. But yeah, I'm glad. I'm really glad. I'm happy that you found the stream. So yeah, before I'm closing that, or before I'm closing this, I think I might be even streaming something tomorrow. I don't think that it will be the social media application. I guess I will maybe go with Blazor, because I really want to work on Blazor as well. I worked, or I studied, I played with Blazor, I guess, for 2 years already, when it was just an experimental project, and now that it is really globally available, I just really want to play with it a little bit more. So I guess I will stream tomorrow, but probably some time around 8 o'clock in Romania. That would be 7 o'clock in Croatia and 7 o'clock in South Africa. So if you want to join that stream, that would be great. And till tomorrow, I promise that I'll think about how we can collaborate and work on this application together. Maybe we just then create issues and start to work on them. Maybe we start to do code reviews, and maybe we make the code reviews and pull requests part of the stream itself. I guess that could be very instructive for a lot of us. So yeah, Robert, we are also in lockdown here in Johannesburg. My city was an epicenter in South Africa. Oh my god, that doesn't sound very good. But now the lockdown restrictions are being relaxed. Yeah, in Romania also they relaxed just a little bit of I guess 2 weeks ago, and we're hoping that they will be relaxing them just a little bit more starting with 1st of June. But yeah, we'll see. So yeah, just if you can, just drop by tomorrow, starting at 8 p.m. Romania time, 7 p.m. Romania, Croatia and South Africa. And I'll think about till tomorrow how we're gonna work on that, so that we can write together code on this application. So yeah, if you have time, then I would be more than happy if you could join me. Thank you very much for your contribution to the stream with all the questions that you had. That was really important for me, because yeah, I know that, or I feel that I'm not doing this well for nothing. So I'm really happy when I find people that really think that they can learn something from it. For me, it is also a learning experience. So once again, thank you very much for your engagement, or for all the comments that you left here. So yeah, then thank you very much once again, and well, have a good night, and hopefully see you tomorrow.